of the year. And that afternoon or that evening, you go over the results, and you're going to determine what your reading groups are. Now, of course, you're going to be given additional reading assessments, but if you want to have a sense right out of the chute of the range of abilities represented by your kids in your class, that inventory is going to do it. And if folks work from the classic three-group paradigm, whether you call them guided reading groups or whatever label that you use in your district, usually teachers have three reading groups. Well, those are your word study groups too. So your below-level reading group, that's going to be your below-level word study group. Now, even within that, there may be some variation. There may be some children who are way below the others. In Chapter 3 of Words Their Way, we give an example, Chapter 2, we give an example of, okay, it looks like you've got 5 reading groups. Here's a couple of ways that you can think about combining. So you'll take the outliers and pull them into a group that you already have. And that's, of course, a problem-solving activity, but it's one that teachers can pair up with and talk about, okay, I've got this one child who's way down here, what do you think about me putting them up in this other group? The children may even have different words that they're sorting, but they're doing within each group, but they're doing the sorts together, and because it's a smaller group, the teacher can look on, of course, and see how each child is doing, how they're coming along with their sorts. But right there, it's just reassuring the teachers, we don't think you need 5 or 6 different groups.
So a lot of
study groups are your reading groups.
A lot of our teachers have been taught that absolutely not. Your reading groups are not to be your spelling inventory groups. So what you're saying, that it's basically a way for them to, quote unquote, buy into the fact that this doesn't need to be all this added work if you take those groups within and split them with your outliers, and you can almost see a pattern within there with some of the students that could be grouped together, so differentiate even within that reading group.
Exactly. You just, in a nutshell, you've expressed it.
Okay. So,
and selling it.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to sell it just to get them there to be using it. And the fact that it is reading is where we want it to go, and that it doesn't need to be a separate piece with just the spelling. That's kind of what...
That's right. And it sounds like you have, you've got a perception there now that you're going to have to work against. Somewhere in the past, they've been told that reading is not, and the spelling inventory, they are not related. And that's exactly the opposite, of course. They are integrally related. Now, in saying that, we need to be clear. Some folks think, okay, so the new words that we're going to have in our reading selections, those are the spelling words. No, that doesn't mean that at all, because the ability to read words correctly always runs a bit ahead of the ability to spell those words correctly, and that's why if one really drills down, says, okay, if we're reading on a somewhere second grade-ish level, our spelling words are going to be coming from early second grade, late first grade. The words that we use for spelling, the children should be able to read, and they should have experienced seeing those words in print for a fair amount of time before they appear in a spelling list.
Okay, so
How do they get that?
say that. Can you?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. We had we have a lot of construction going on here. So while you were saying that, we had people coming in,
An inspector.
an inspector coming in. So we all kind of were trying to shoo them out, but we all want to hear that again. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
Oh, not at all. Most important, spelling words should be words that the students can read. They
Okay.
shouldn't have to sit there trying to sound them out. If they can't read them, and we're worried about them learning to read them, well, then they're really in a hole when we try to help them find patterns in those words. I often say, well, how can they look for patterns? How can they analyze these words when they don't know what the words are?
And that's where the parents come in saying that they're too easy.
Exactly. That's where that comes from. Yeah.
So it's more or less that you're trying to get them to really own that pattern consistently
within print.
within print, right?
I'm sorry, run that by me again, please.
We're trying to, it's so against the grain, I think, of what a lot of these teachers feel and think. I'm trying to get a hold on this. So the words are possibly could be easy because they can read them so well, but it doesn't mean they're applying them within their writing, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's often why that happens. You know, we say, oh, these are easy words. Well, they're easy because the kids can read them. They should be easy that way.
Okay.
And that's our response to parents. They just assume the word should be hard.
Yeah.
And so we reassure them. And this could be at a parent night. It could be in a letter home about describing the word study program. Say this is probably not the way that you experienced spelling.
Right.
But it should lead to your children not only being better spellers, but be better readers, and they're going to enjoy their spelling and word study instruction. And when I'm talking to parents directly, I like to say, how many of you had fun with spelling? Did you really like writing those words 10 times each? And you know, that's what 99% of us growing up, that's what was done to us. And some people will say, well, yeah, but I learned to spell. I said, well, but did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Your children are not only going to learn how to spell, but it's much more likely they're going to enjoy it. And they're going to be interested in words.
Yeah, so that's what it evolves into, an interest in the words, which then
That's right.
kind of helps where they're getting into those prefixes and suffixes and roots and the understanding of a word's base and what it means to be able to then spell other words, correct?
Correct. To spell other words and to figure out in their reading unfamiliar words that they run into, because they'll be able to apply that knowledge that has been developed. If you, I'm thinking of going back to, here are the questions that the teachers ask. If there's time to work this in, Meg, and I usually do this, not all the time, but when I'm walking in cold turkey with a group of teachers, and what you have described is so much the way it is across the country. I mean, teachers have these same questions. Parents have these same questions. Teachers don't have an extensive background in word study or how the system works, as do you, because you had to deliberately commit yourself to it, and you're motivated. So you're trying in turn to motivate these teachers. I like early on to give a couple of examples. Say, spelling does make sense. It really does. It is logical. That doesn't mean it's easy. It does take time to learn. We all know that. But it makes sense. And this is what you're going to help your students understand learning about the logic of the spelling system.
Mm-hmm.
And for the little ones, that can begin with what Magic E does. That's where we compare and contrast a CVC pattern with a pattern that ends in the silent E. There's a lot of consistency in that. There are some exceptions, but most words are going to follow the pattern.
Right, and if you use the terminology oddballs, they love that. They crack up, so.
Oh, good, yeah, that's that rings up with us too. We use that term more often than any other. And then with students who are farther along, comparing and contrasting two-syllable words where there's a single consonant in the middle versus two consonants in the middle. Well, what's that about? Well, most of the time it signals that there's a single consonant in the middle in a word like human. The vowel is going to be long. And so if you're not sure how to spell a word like human, but you've learned, okay, if you hear a long vowel in the first syllable, there's going to be just one consonant that follows it.
Mm-hmm.
That's helpful. When you are run into a word like human and you aren't sure what it is, well, that pattern can help you. If there's just one consonant in the middle, try a long vowel sound. But if that doesn't sound like a word you know, then try the short vowel sound. So we're giving these examples, and you're doing that, showing how spelling and reading actually, you're learning about these principles and in reading and spelling, how one can reinforce the other.
Yeah, you're using your cueing system to some extent too. They are,
Exactly.
Even when we tell them.
And then the one that usually blows most people away is the spelling meaning connection, showing an example of that. And I love to use words like sign, S-I-G-N, and then ask them now, pretend if you're a fourth or fifth grade teacher, write that word on the board, smartboard, whatever board you have, and then ask the students, now, when you sign your name, what do you call that? And then I'll just say signature, and then write signature right underneath sign so that the S-I-G-N line up.
Mm-hmm.
And ask them, now, what do you notice here? And then use another example, like, and I probably did this at Rutgers. They're my favorite examples. The word bomb with the silent B at the end, but then right underneath it, we write bombard. Okay, we still have the B-O-M-B spelling. We hear the B in bombard. We don't in bomb. And then muscle and muscular, the silent C and the sounded C.
Competition's another one.
It's starting in the... I'm sorry, was there a question there that I missed?
No, I'm laughing. I said competition. I always have to stop and think myself about the word compete and then go into competition. But it's true. You don't really... They're not interconnected. I don't think people really get that. And I think once you do, it helps your spelling.
You pointed out to them.
Yeah, that's definitely something I need to do.
And you can use that example, Meg. That's a great example. The word competition has always given me fits. But then I learned about the spelling meaning connection. Okay, where does competition come from? Well, the base word or root word, whatever term you use, is compete. Oh my gosh, I hear a long E in compete. And these words are related in spelling, therefore they're related in meaning. And again, that's pretty dramatic for most teachers when we show them that relationship between spelling and meaning. But then I'd like to hasten to add, now those of you who teach primary grades, you're right, you're not here yet. Your students are not here yet, but you're building up to this by helping them discover patterns that work at the level of sound. The intermediate teachers will help students learn these patterns that reflect meaning, but you're helping your students discover these sound patterns. And as we've said, there's a lot of more logic that underlies these spelling to sound patterns than a lot of us think.
Which actually could help me link the fact that what they're doing is such a foundational piece to what these students will need then to in turn understand meaning.